My name is Amelia Cooper. Last week, my mother called me out of the blue and said, "Since you're finally making real money, it's time you pay back what I gave." She meant every dollar she took from me when I was 16, the tips I earned waiting tables, the overtime I worked in college, even the savings I hid in a coffee can under my bed. She called it paying back. I called it survival. Now, 10 years later, I'm running a business she never believed in. A company I built from late nights and burned out weekends, the kind of success she only started noticing once it had a dollar sign attached. And now that there's something to take, she wants in. But this time, I won't be handing anything over. Because I've learned something my mother never did. You don't build an empire by apologizing for owning it. The first time my mother took money from me, I was 14. I had just finished my first weekend shift at Maggie's Diner, sticky floors, rushed orders, and a blister the size of a dime on my heel. But when I got home and held out the crumpled bills, proud of earning something real, she didn't say, "Good job." She said, "Hand it over." I blinked. "What?" "For rent," she said flatly, already reaching for the wad of cash. "This house isn't free." We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and a fridge that hummed like it was in pain. I knew we weren't rich, but I didn't know that being her daughter meant becoming her backup wallet. That night, I cried in the bathroom quietly, behind the locked door. Then I dried my face, made a list of extra shifts, and told myself it was temporary. It wasn't. By 16, I had a part-time job after school, and another on Saturdays. The tips from Maggie's went straight into my mother's purse. "You want to eat here, don't you?" she'd say, as if I had somewhere else to go. She took half my paychecks for bills and claimed my birthday money from relatives to pay off the electric. When I asked where the money was going, she'd slap the question down with a single word: ungrateful. So I stopped asking, but I didn't stop watching. She always had her nails done, always smoked name-brand cigarettes, always had new outfits when payday hit. Meanwhile, I patched holes in my jeans and counted the coins in my pencil case like treasure. The worst part wasn't the money. It was how she made it sound like love. "This is how families work," she'd say, arms crossed, blocking the hallway. "I gave you life. I fed you, clothed you, stayed when everyone else left. You owe me." I didn't know how to argue with that. Not back then. Instead, I worked. I cleaned hotel rooms during spring break. I tutored younger kids for $10 an hour. I started skipping lunch to save money and told myself it was for something bigger. I didn't know what that was yet. I just knew I didn't want to be like her. Mrs. Leung, the owner of Maggie's, noticed one day when I was rubbing my temples after counting tips. "She taking it again?" she asked gently, sliding me a soda. I nodded. "She says it's to teach me responsibility." Mrs. Leung scoffed. "She's teaching you fear. But you," she pointed at me with her stirrer straw, "you've got spark. Save what you can. Don't let anyone call your future their property." It was the first time anyone had told me I could have a future of my own. That night, I found an old coffee can and taped it shut. I slid in a $5 bill and hid it beneath the floorboard of my closet. That was my first secret. My first rebellion. My first seed of something mine. Over the next year, that can filled slowly, $5 here, $10 there. The occasional 20 I managed to hide before she got home. She never noticed. But I did. And that made all the difference. Because long before I built a company, long before I had profits, patents, or paychecks, I had that can, and the fire to keep it safe. I used to think love meant sacrifice. That to be a good daughter. You just swallowed it all. The blame, the guilt, the twisted logic. You smiled when she smiled. You cried in private. You worked, and then worked some more, and if your mother took it all, well, that's just how family worked. But something changed the day I turned 17. It wasn't a big fight or a dramatic moment. It was quiet. We were at the grocery store, standing in the checkout line. I'd offered to pay for the bread and eggs with my own money I'd hidden from her in my sock, because the coffee can was full again. I pulled it out, proud, but she snatched the bills from my hand before the cashier even finished scanning. "Give me that," she snapped. "You owe me for the dentist last month." "What?" I blinked. "I thought Medicaid covered that." "It didn't," she said, without looking at me. "And even if it did, you still owe me." I stood there frozen, humiliated. The cashier avoided my eyes. My mother didn't notice, or didn't care. That night, I stared at the ceiling and thought, is this what love is supposed to feel like? Transactional? Measured in groceries, power bills, and invisible debts? She never said, "I love you," without following it with, "So you should understand," or, "So do this for me." It was never unconditional. It was always earned or owed. It took me another year to realize love is not a ledger. But my mother kept detailed accounts. She'd list them off like prayers. "I fed you every night, didn't I? I worked 2 jobs when you were little. I gave up my dreams for you." As if that gave her permanent access to my bank account. As if parenting was a down payment, and now I was the interest. By then, I had started journaling tiny notebooks I kept hidden between textbooks. In them, I tracked every penny she took, every time she called me selfish, every moment that made me feel smaller. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Mason, my lab partner in senior chemistry, found one once. He read a few lines before I could snatch it back. I expected him to tease me, but instead, he said, "You're documenting abuse." I laughed. "No, she's just intense. Hard life. You know." He tilted his head. "Does it feel like love to you?" That question lingered for days. The truth was, I didn't know what love felt like not from her. I knew what obligation felt like, what manipulation felt like, what survival felt like. But love? The kind that gives without taking, that lifts instead of leeching. I'd never tasted it. Mason started walking me home after school. He never asked questions, never judged, just listened when I wanted to talk, and stayed silent when I didn't. For the first time, someone was close to me without asking for anything in return. It scared me, because when all you've known is conditional affection, real kindness feels like a trick. But I let it in, slowly, carefully. And as our friendship deepened, so did something else inside me, a voice that whispered, "Maybe you don't owe her everything. Maybe love doesn't mean going broke to feel worthy." I started planning, saving more, researching scholarships, mapping out a life where I didn't owe anyone anything. Not even her. Because love, I finally realized, isn't something you should have to repay. And the minute it becomes a transaction, it stops being love. College wasn't a dream, it was a jailbreak. When I got that acceptance letter to a state university 3 hours away, I folded it into my pillowcase and didn't tell my mum for a full week. I knew what she'd say. "How will you afford that? You're abandoning me? After everything I've done for you?" So I waited, saved, worked double shifts. Then one morning over burnt toast, I laid the envelope on the table and said, as calmly as I could, "I got in." She didn't smile, didn't hug me, just stared like I'd confessed a crime. And then she laughed. "Good luck," she said. "But don't expect help from me. I already paid my dues." That night, I packed what little I had and left without a goodbye. College was messy, loud, chaotic, and for the first time, mine. No one stole my tips. No one emptied my drawers. No one guilted me into skipping class to run errands. But freedom didn't mean ease. I worked 2 job-sewn waiting tables, 1 restocking books at the campus library. I skipped out on parties, learned to stretch instant noodles 6 ways, and slept with a laptop on my stomach because it doubled as a heater in winter. Still, I felt rich. Not because I had money, but because every decision, every step forward belonged to me. There was no one to intercept my progress. No one waiting with a handout, calling it help. I majored in business with a minor in design. It sounded boring to most people, but to me it was liberation. I wasn't just learning to build a future, I was learning how to protect it. How to build things no one else could take. I didn't talk to my mother much during those years. She sent texts, occasionally mostly complaints. I need help with the car. You could at least send something. Don't forget who raised you. But I did forget. On purpose. I didn't forget the facts, I forgot the guilt. Refused to carry the weight she wanted to strap onto my back. During junior year, I launched a tiny online shop selling digital planners and printable budgeting tools. Just a side hustle, I thought. But within 3 months, I had 500 orders. Then 0. I reinvested every dollar. Learned to code. Hired a freelance designer. By the time I graduated, my shop had grown into a small business. A real one. My name on the account. My name on the LLC. No one else's. When I walked across the stage in my cap and gown, I didn't see my mom in the crowd. She hadn't come. Maybe she thought I owed her a front row seat. But I had already paid for that moment, with years of silence, sacrifice, and self-teaching. And I wasn't giving her one more inch of credit. After the ceremony, my friends and I ate dollar tacos and danced in the campus quad under paper lanterns strung between trees. It wasn't fancy, but it was joy. Unfiltered. Mine. That night, I lay in bed and opened an email that had landed while I was walking across the stage. It was from a major budgeting opponent I'd admired since I was 17. They wanted to acquire my business. Not partner. Not invest. Buy it. Outright. For 6 figures. I stared at the screen, stunned. Then I cried. Long, ugly, loud, tears into the silence of my dorm room. Because I hadn't just built something. I had escaped. And for the first time in my life, no one could take it from me. It took exactly 9 days after the acquisition was announced for my mom to reappear. I was sitting in my new apartmenta, 1 bedroom with sunlight, a real stove, and my name on the lease when her name popped up on my phone. Mum, heard about your big sale. Congrats. Proud of you. I stared at the message. The words felt foreign, congratulatory, warm, even, like they'd been passed through a filter. But I knew better. Still, I typed back. Thanks. 5 minutes later, she followed up. Thought maybe we could talk. It's been a while. I knew where this was going, but I said yes anyway. Curiosity is a tricky thing. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our old neighborhood and the life I'd built. She was already seated when I walked in, wearing a new coat and acrylic nails that clicked against her cup. Amelia, she said brightly, as if we'd never missed a beat. I sat across from her. Hi. She smiled. You look good. Healthy. Successful. I said nothing. I saw the news, she continued. That app thing you sold. What was it called again? Budget. Bloom. I replied quietly. Cute name. She sipped. I always told you were creative. That line that she'd always believed in was so absurd I nearly laughed. But I didn't. She leaned forward then, voice softening. I've been thinking about the past. Of course she had. I know I was hard on you, she said. But I did what I had to do. I raised you alone. I kept the lights on. I made sure you had clothes. You also took my paychecks, I replied calmly. And my tips. And my birthday money. Her smile tightened. Well, that was family support. You wouldn't be here without those lessons. There it was. The twist. The logic she always used. If I'd survived, then what she did couldn't have been that bad. If I'd made it, then she deserved credit. I said nothing. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, slid it across the table. I hesitated, then opened it. It was a request, not even disguised. 25. 0 listed as a gesture of appreciation for years of housing, feeding, and emotional labor. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds, then looked up. You're serious? She shrugged, unapologetic. You wouldn't have succeeded without me. This is just paying it forward. No, I said. It's paying you back, and I don't owe you. Her eyes narrowed. I gave up everything for you, and then you took everything you could from me. Her hand twitched toward the paper again. I'm not asking for half. I'm asking for acknowledgement. You don't want acknowledgement, I said quietly. You want ownership. That landed. She straightened in her seat. You've changed. No, I said. I've just stopped shrinking. We sat in silence for a long moment, her paper lying between us like a landmine. I'm not giving you money, I said finally. Not because I'm cruel, but because I worked for every cent, and you worked against me at every turn. Her face reddened. So that's it? You cut me off? I stopped owing you a long time ago, I said, standing up. You just didn't notice. As I turned to leave, she called after me. Amelia, don't forget who raised you. I paused at the door. I didn't forget, I said without looking back. That's exactly why I'm walking away. I should have known she wouldn't stop at a single no. By the time I got home that evening, she had already texted me 5 times. Each one sounded increasingly desperate, like someone slipping further into an emotional spiral. You misunderstood me. I wasn't trying to take from you. I just thought we were family. You wouldn't even have that company if I hadn't taught you to be strong. Please don't shut me out. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I knew where this road led. One message would become an opening. One conversation would become an obligation. 1 ounce of sympathy would become leverage. So I stayed quiet. That's when the campaign began. She didn't come at me directly after that. She used her tools. Extended family, old neighbors, even my childhood best friend. One by one, they started reaching out, always with the same line. Your mom's hurting. She just wants to reconnect. Can't you just let the past go? What they didn't see, what they couldn't see, was the years I'd already spent doing exactly that. Letting go. Forgiving in silence. Choosing peace over confrontation. Living small so she wouldn't feel threatened. But when I stopped shrinking, she called it betrayal. My aunt left me a voicemail one morning. Amelia, your mom called me crying. She said you're ignoring her. I know she wasn't perfect, but she raised you. That's gotta count for something. It does count. I never said it didn't. But raising a child isn't a favor you collect on years later with a bill and a smirk. It's the job you sign up for. The job you either do with louver, with strings. My mother. She tied knots so tight, they cut into me for years. And now that I'd finally untied myself, she wanted me back in the ropes. But I wasn't going. Not anymore. She escalated next. Public Facebook posts. Vague enough to seem benign, but sharp enough to draw blood. It's a shame when daughters forget where they come from. I gave everything I had, and ended up with nothing. Success changes people. Her friends commented with heart emojis and praying for you messages. Distant cousins started tagging me. And still, I stayed silent. Not because I was afraid, because I was done performing. This wasn't shame. This wasn't guilt. This was grief. Grieving the mother I wished I had damned, finally accepting the one I did. Mason was the one person who really got it. He called me one night, after I sent him a screenshot of another one of her posts. Do you want me to say something publicly? He asked. No, I said. That's what she wants. A stage. Then what do you want? I thought for a long second. Then said, I want to build a life where her voice doesn't echo. He was quiet, then simply replied, then keep building. So I did. Every day I poured myself into my business, growing it with intention. I hired 2 interns, both first-generation college grads like me. I started mentoring girls online through a nonprofit that supported young entrepreneurs from difficult homes. If my mother's legacy was guilt, I was building one rooted in freedom. I didn't block her. I didn't retaliate. I just disappeared from her narrative. That, more than anything, seemed to unsettle her. She thrived off reactions. But silence? That was power. It started with a DM from someone I didn't know. Hi! I saw your budgeting templates on Etsy and loved them. But I was confused. Are you really the one who started the business? Someone online is saying otherwise. I froze. At first, I thought it was spam. Then another message came in, this time from a former high school classmate. Hey, weird question. Your mom posted that Budget Bloom was her idea? Said you just helped run it? My stomach dropped. I clicked open Facebook, an app I barely touched anymore, and scrolled until I saw it. There it was. A long, performative post from my mother. Public, of course. Tagged with hashtags like single mom strong and entrepreneur family. So proud of my daughter for helping grow the business I dreamed up during my double shifts all those years ago. Budget Bloom was born in our kitchen, with me sketching ideas on napkins while she watched. It's amazing to see it finally thrive. Feels like a full circle moment. Taverna. A dozen comments. All congratulating her. All assuming the story was true. I stared at the screen like it had slapped me. Because this wasn't just manipulation. This was erasure. She hadn't just taken my money, my tips, my time. Now, she wanted my voice, my work, my name. And for the first time in years, I felt something deeper than anger. I felt violated. I called Mason. She's trying to take credit for my company, I said, my voice shaking. He didn't say, I told you so. He didn't say, let it go. He just asked, do you want to fight this? Yes, I whispered. But not for her. For me. He helped me draft a statement. Simple, clear, calm. Budget Bloom was not a family collaboration. It was built from scratch during late-night shifts, under student debt, and without a cent of support. I appreciate the pride people feel, but please understand, this business was born in silence, grown in pain, and nurtured entirely on my own. Any other narrative is not just misleading, it's false. I posted it on LinkedIn, not Facebook, because I wasn't speaking to her audience anymore. I was speaking to mine. And people listened. My post gained traction. Not viral, but strong. Dozens of messages poured in from other women, especially saying they'd experienced the same. Family, taking credit for survival, for resilience, for what they never helped build. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. But my mother didn't take it quietly. That night, she left a voicemail. Her voice tired, brittle, crackled through the speaker. You embarrassed me. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Is that what you wanted? To make me look like a thief? I was proud of you. I just wanted a piece of the pride. That last line struck me. A piece of the pride. Like it was pie. Like it could be sliced and served to whoever showed up late to the table. But pride isn't transferable. You don't get to own someone else's journey because you once bought them a backpack or made spaghetti in a dim kitchen while resenting them for dreaming bigger than you ever did. You don't get credit because you were nearby. You don't get legacy because you claim it louder. So I blocked her number. Not out of rage. Out of clarity. I didn't hate her. I didn't wish her harm. But I would no longer let her write herself into chapters she didn't bleed for. The next morning, I woke up lighter. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and looked over a proposal from a startup incubator asking me to come in as a guest speaker. They wanted me to talk about bootstrapping, about perseverance, but all about ownership. And I had never felt more qualified. Letting go wasn't loud. It didn't come with fireworks or final speeches or some tearful, cinematic goodbye. It was subtle, quiet, almost boring. Letting go looked like making pancakes on a Sunday morning without checking my phone. It looked like deleting my mom's contact not out of spite, but because I didn't want her voice occupying space in my pocket anymore. It looked like peace. For so long, I thought healing had to mean confrontation, that I couldn't move forward until I made her admit everything, the lies, the taking, the guilt she weaponized. But now I understood. I didn't need her apology. I needed distance. And distance, for the first time in my life, felt like safety. I kept growing Budget Bloom, now expanding to digital planners and speaking workshops. One afternoon, I opened a package from a woman in Montana who had bought one of my early budget kits. Inside was a handwritten note. Your story gave me permission to walk away from my own mother's cycle. I'm learning to breathe again. Thank you. I stared at the letter for a long time. It hit me in the chest, this strange, raw gratitude. Not for what my mom did, but for what I did in spite of her. Because every hour she stole from me, I turned into discipline. Every insult, I turned into direction. She hadn't taught me to succeed. She had taught me what not to repeat. And that, in a backwards way, was still something worth transforming. One weekend, I visited my childhood neighborhood, not out of nostalgia but to speak at a local high school about building from nothing. As I stood in the gym, looking at rows of teenagers trying not to fall asleep, I spotted a girl in the back, slouched hoodie, arms crossed, eyes sharp, but exhausted. I saw myself, and I said what I wish someone had told me back then. You're allowed to outgrow people who taught you survival but never safety. You don't owe anyone your future just because they made your past. When the talk ended, she came up to me. Her name was Lila, 17, working 2 jobs, saving to apply to college out of state. My mom thinks I'm ungrateful, she said, but I just want a life that's mine. I looked her straight in the eyes. So build it, and don't apologize for that. After that event, I stopped checking to see if my mother had posted anything new. I stopped wondering if she was gossiping about me at church or crying to relatives or rewriting our story to fit her victimhood. Because none of that mattered. The truth didn't need her permission to exist. And I didn't need her narrative to validate mine. One evening, Mason and I sat on my balcony, cold drinks, tired smiles, quiet city lights blinking below us. He looked over and said, "You're different now." "How?" "Lighter. Not less serious. Just like you finally put something down." I thought for a moment, then said, "I think I stopped trying to prove I'm good enough." He nodded. "You always were." For the first time in my life, I believed that. The building didn't look like much from the outside. It had brick walls faded from decades of sun, rusted signage from a failed bakery before me, and windows that creaked in the wind. But it was mine. Mine in the way nothing ever had been, not borrowed, not halfway given, not guiltily extended and yanked back. I had signed the lease. I had written the business plan. I had saved every dollar for the deposit, with blistered feet and tired eyes, and a stubborn belief that one day I would walk into a space that belonged entirely to me. And now I had. Budget Bloom was going offline and into the real world. A brick-and-mortar community space, part retail, part co-working, part workshop hub, a place for women like mess crappy, overlooked, capable to come and build in peace. I remember the first time I stood in the center of that dusty, echoing room with the keys still warm in my hand. And I whispered out loud, "She doesn't get this part." It wasn't cruel. It wasn't angry. It was just truth. Because for years, she had taken me tips, my hours, my joy. And for years, I kept trying to win her over with milestones. Every achievement was a question in disguise. Do you see me now? Was I worth raising now? But I had stopped asking. This space, the fresh paint I'd chosen, the shelves I'd built with Mason, the calendar of upcoming financial literacy events for teen girls, this wasn't a trophy. It was a declaration. Not to her. To myself. The grand opening wasn't fancy. We had folding chairs and homemade cupcakes, and a hand-painted sign. But the room was full friends, early customers, a local journalist, and a few girls from the high school I'd spoken at weeks ago. One of them, Lila, brought her mom. Her mom cried while hugging me and said, "Thank you for showing her that women don't have to stay stuck." I didn't cry until after they left, because for the first time, I realized I wasn't carrying my mom's absence anymore. I was filling the space with presence, with impact, with proof. She never showed up, of course. Not to the opening. Not to the press feature that followed. Not to the podcast interview where I said, clear and calm, I grew up believing love had to be earned. I no longer live by that rule. But a week later, I got a letter in the mail. Handwritten. No return address. But I knew her handwriting immediately. "Amelia, I saw the article. You looked beautiful. The place looked beautiful. I know we've said a lot of things we can't unsay. I won't take credit. I won't post anything. I just want to say, I see it now. I see you. Maybe too late. But still, I hope one day you'll let me step inside." I held the letter for a long time. I didn't rip it up. I didn't frame it either. I placed it in a drawer filled with old documents and receipts from my first year in business. Not because I needed it. Because I wanted the reminder. Even when some people can't walk beside you, it doesn't mean you stop walking. I never wrote back. I never opened the door. Because the truth is, forgiveness doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it just means no longer needing the last word. Now, I walk into that building every day with a key I earned and a name I built. And when I see the women who come through our door, some of them mothers, some of them daughters, some of them both, I remember that my story didn't begin with her approval, and it won't end with her regret. She called it paying back. But this is moving forward.